It's Kyle here, and a couple months ago when I did my last book haul video, I mentioned I would be doing another book haul video for a while because I have a way too large to be read pile. But there was one thing I was going to make an exception for that, and that was actually to buy some books while I was on vacation. I was in Myrtle Beach last week, spent a week at the beach, loved it, had a great time. In fact, I've already posted a video of the view from my hotel room on the channel, so you might have already seen that. But the reason I made an exception to buy some books while I was on vacation, there's a few bookstores in Myrtle Beach that there just aren't around where I live. So there's a different selection. I'll see some new books. So I've always got a lot of books while I was on vacation. So I decided I was going to make an exception to that because I only do vacation once a year, so that was it. But after this, I am on a little bit of a book ban in regard to buying any new ones for a while until I get my to-be-read pile down a little bit lower. But I wanted to share with you the books that I got while I was on vacation, so let's just get started. First up is The Man in the High Castle by Philip Dick. Up until the TV series for this started about a year ago, I wasn't really familiar with this book. I should say I haven't seen the TV series. I just saw the commercials for it, but the idea sounded interesting, so I went on, like most people, I Wikipedia'd it, and I found out it was based on a book. I was like, ooh, that book sounds really interesting. By the time I decided I was going to wait, because I had another Philip K. Dick book. It was a collection of short stories. I wanted to read that first. I actually just read that while I was on vacation. So actually, like the day after I finished that book, I was going to one of those bookstores I mentioned, and I saw this book. I was like, well, hey, I just enjoyed a book by Philip K. Dick. This one sounded interesting. Let's get it. So, The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of an alternate history genre book. So it sounds very, very interesting. It's basically if Nazi Germany and Japan occupy the United States after World War II, what life is in America about in the early 60s in that environment. So it should be interesting. Looking forward to reading it. Next up, you have Beacon 23 by Hugh, Howey. This is a book and an author I was not familiar with. I had no knowledge of this whatsoever, but it's one of those things, I was kind of browsing the section, the title caught my eye, and I said, well, that's kind of an interesting title. So I read the back cover, sounded very, very interesting, decided to get it. So basically, this book is set on kind of a station that kind of functions almost like a lighthouse, but in space for spaceships, as you might imagine. And it kind of deals with the individual who is, I guess the best way would be there is stationed there. Basically, some series of events starts to happen, and it becomes a lot of action, drama, suspense type stuff involving aliens, wars, all sorts of stuff. So it sounded kind of an interesting idea. I love sci-fi, and sounded interesting, so I love to check it out. So, Beacon 23 by Hugh, Howey. Next up is The Human Division by John Scalzi. I've now read 2 books by John Scalzi and one collection of short stories that he helped put together. That one of the short stories was his. And after the 2 novels I've read of his, Scalzi's quickly become one of my favorite authors. So now about any time I go to the bookstore and I'm looking for something to get, I usually check out Scalzi because he's a very prolific author. He writes new books constantly. And there's a lot of books of his I haven't read yet. And when I was going through this selection, I hadn't seen this one before. It sounded very, very interesting, so I thought I'd check it out. It's another kind of sci-fi book dealing with politics in regard to Earth interacting with kind of a larger galactic government and the tensions involved. Now, I'm not going to get into all the stuff that's mentioned in the back cover, but John Scalzi is just an awesome author. If you haven't read any of these books, I highly recommend it, and I'm very much looking forward to reading The Human Division by him. I'm sure it'll be awesome. Next up, you have Armada by Ernest Cline. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline was one of my favorite books last year when I read it, or 2 years ago. I can't remember when I read it, but the year I read it was one of my favorite books. Loved it. So as I knew immediately, I can mention that Armada was going to be his next book. So ooh, when that comes out, first came out in hardcover, and at the time I was like, I believe I'll wait till paperback to get it, and then it came out in paperback. So this is when I just noticed it came out on paperback while I was on vacation. I'm sure it just came out on paperback a little bit, but I just hadn't noticed it. So very excited to read this, because if this is half as good as Ready Player One was, it should be awesome because Ready Player One is an amazing book. Has another interesting premise by it that I'm not really going to get into, but because I'm sure most people are familiar with this book. But Armada by Ernest Cline. Next up, you have Flatland, A Romance of Many Dimensions by Edwin Abbott. I should say the reason I learned about Flatland was a random scene in an episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon mentions the book Flatline. And I never had really heard of it until I saw it mention that episode. And I really didn't think much about it until I was browsing through the books, happened to get to the classic section. I saw this book, and it was actually stationed so the front cover is facing. If it had been like that, I probably would have noticed it. But it was like that. I was like, Flatline, that sounds familiar. When I picked it up and read the back cover, I was like, oh yeah, that's that book that Sheldon mentioned of Big Bang Theory. And it's kind of an interesting premise. Basically, book set in a world where there's only 2 dimensions, so you have like shapes like squares and stuff like that interacting with other squares, and it's just a very interesting idea. It's a short novel, so I thought, hey, I'd check it out. If anything, it might make the scene of The Big Bang Theory a little bit more funny to me, because I do watch The Big Bang Theory a lot on reruns, so I see that episode every once in a while. So I thought, hey, Big Bang Theory inspired me to read Flatline by Edwin Abbott. And next up, I have a couple non-fiction books. First up is The Heart of the World, A Journey to Tibet's Lost Paradise by Ian Baker. And this is basically kind of a combination of a delve into the history of Buddhism in Tibet, and also kind of a travel book. Basically this guy exploring various aspects of Tibet and kind of the history behind it. So it sounded interesting. Tibetan history has always been a very fascinating subject to me, but I've never really read a book kind of about it. So I thought I'd check it out. And I actually got this one at a used bookstore, or a discount bookstore, I should say, and it was only like $2 or $3. I'm like, well, hey, for that, I'm willing to get it. So, The Heart of the World, A Journey to Tibet's Lost Paradise by Ian Baker. And I also get this other nonfiction book at that same discount bookstore, and that's An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, What Going to Space Taught Me About Ingenuity, Determination, and Being Prepared for Anything by Colonel Chris Hadfield. I've seen this book a lot before in bookstores. I'm very familiar with Chris Hadfield because of a lot of stuff he's been involved with. He's a very interesting fella. I love reading science nonfiction books, especially one set in space. It's a subject I've always been interested in. But it's one of those books, when I saw it, it's always a little bit more than I wanted to pay for it. But when I saw it at a discount bookstore, I was like, hey, here's my chance to read that book. So, Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Chris Hadfield. And that's the books I got while I was on vacation. So, hope you enjoyed the haul. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them in the comment section below. Based on the books I mentioned, if you have any recommendations for books I should check out in the future, please let me know, even though I won't be buying any books for the next few months. Eventually this book ban will end and I'll start buying books again. So I always keep a list of books I want to get. And if you leave a comment and it's books I'm interested in, that book very well might make that list. So hope you enjoyed the haul. I was on vacation week. If you haven't been on vacation yet, I hope you have a great summer vacation at some point. Have some fun this summer. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I'll see you the next time.